Hello and welcome. It's another Wednesday, and we're here for WeAreDevelopers Live again. How are you doing, Dan?
Oh, I'm all right. Yeah, I'm very well. I've just taken lots of medication because I caught the lurgy earlier this week. But yeah, I'm back on my feet, feeling good. I'm all right.
So you're all lemon-sipped and beach-jumped up and yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's that one thing we do well apparently in the UK, right? Is medication to stay at work.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Like the amount of stuff that you get in the supermarket that basically just covers all the symptoms, that not the causes. And basically, like you're going through office at Typhoid Mary and get everybody else sick as well. But at least you can look chipper in the morning and bright and bushy-tailed into the office, although you're dying inside. But
yeah, that kind of accurately sums it up, I think. It's funny how actually before the Congress, the World Congress in July, I had a couple of people from We Are Developers say, oh, by the way, when you come over, could you bring me some whatever it was, like a allergy medication and things like this, because it's apparently tricky to get in Germany or in Austria, which I didn't know. But, yeah.
That was me, and the reason is that basically the allergy medication in England has caffeine in it, so you don't get tired from it. Whereas the one in Europe basically knocks you out. So basically, you can't sneeze if you're unconscious, I guess is their idea. But yeah, the British one is basically like working against the allergies, but at the same time also, just like not making you drowsy kind of thing. Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a lot of stuff in the program today, and I'm very excited that we have a guest coming this time. And I'm going to be really, really bad at pronouncing the name right now. So the guest is Rick Ossendriver.
That sounds pretty good, yeah.
Fair enough.
Hello, everyone.
And what company you're with? I can't find it out. It's really well hidden here. Like.
Yeah, I work for Picnic, which is an online supermarket based in the Netherlands. We have customers in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. We do online groceries.
Yeah, and it's those little electric cars that basically are just driving around the city and look like they should be in a fairground, but they look fun to drive. Have you driven one as well?
I haven't. I joined during COVID, so then I couldn't do the trip. But when you join Picnic, you actually usually get to drive one.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's an interesting market, though. Like, I mean, the amount of stuff, like during COVID, that whole thing basically boomed because people couldn't go out themselves and that basically started buying things. And how is it that like all these companies seem to be Dutch, like Picnic is, and like Lieferando in Germany, or Just Eat, I think it's in England. It's also a Dutch company. It seems like they're, I don't know. Is it because you got no hills to drive up on, or is it because there's a benefit of starting a company like that in the Netherlands?
Good question. I don't know the full answer, but I do know that within the Netherlands we have a Picnic, a perfect climate. So I would say indeed for the cars, it's quite easy to get around. They can just park wherever and drive around to do the groceries. So that's also why we started in, for example, the Ruhrgebiet in Germany, and that's how we also extended. So indeed, it helps that there are no hills for our small cars.
Cool. And what do you do there? You're a software engineer. Are you a lead software engineer? Do you have a team, or are you part of a certain product? Or
I'm part of a team. I have worked in two different teams. One in the Java platform team. So we built a lot of the shared modules that all the other teams are building upon. So it's something for databases, monitoring, logging. We basically built standardized modules such that all the other teams could simply use an off-the-shelf solution that we built, minimal configuration, and they could focus on actually building products for Picnic. And now I switched to the targeting team, and there we are building also kind of like platforms, but not with other teams as customers, but with analysts from within Picnic who are our customers, and we make them help with creating targeting people by creating campaigns or doing communications for them. When you order something, you get an email, but if you have your 10th delivery, you might get a gift. We just send some communications about that. And we basically try to make it easier and easier for analysts to define whatever thing they want.
Cool.
And to make the content in the app, for example, really targeted to what you like. So if we know you're a vegan, then you get more vegan products recommended, or you have, for example, a baby, you get some discounts on baby products like that. Like they can do basically whatever, and we support them with providing a platform for that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how how every supermarket has their own app now, like every different one. And you're just like, why isn't that part of my wallet or something like that? It's just, of course, they want your data and they want to sell you things and send you things. But it's interesting how that, I mean, in England, we had Nectar Card for years, and in Germany, it's just starting the whole thing because I guess people didn't want it to be that recorded and that information. I mean, privacy-wise, it's a very important thing because knowing actually what you buy, I can assume a lot of stuff from you from that information. Is this
Exactly.
something you encountered before as well, that people were just wondering about this?
I think this was more maybe a problem at the beginning when we started Picnic, but then I wasn't there, so I'm not sure about that. But I do know that we really focused on using all that data from day one. So we have a really extensive data warehouse, and that allows us to know indeed a lot about the customer, about what they like, and how to best help them to make also the shopping experience the most easiest and the best for the people.
One thing I had with Morrison's in England was always that you got 3 for 1 and 2 for 1 because it seems only families are ordering there. So I ended up with like 20 rolls of toilet paper, and I'm like, that was not what I needed, but okay. There's a lot of like.
Just to jump on the back of what you're saying, Chris, because you know, coming from the UK, I wasn't familiar with Picnic until the World Congress this year, and I found it really interesting the way that I believe it was your CEO, it may have been your CTO, apologies, but I thought it was really interesting, saying about how the app had evolved because there was actually a need to collect clothing, and as in clothing that was being returned by customers, and that essentially they were realizing that then when they would drop off the groceries, that was great, but then there was like kind of a waste of petrol, I suppose, or a waste of energy just going back to the warehouse. So then returning the clothes, and I thought that's a really interesting idea because it's kind of merging together, like you're saying, Chris. There's things that might be similar that already exist, but I don't know of anything in the UK that does that kind of service in an online way. So yeah, I want it in the UK, if I'm honest.
Maybe, who knows?
There used to be specialized things. I mean, the problem is like getting those electric cars over the channel is basically they're going to get wet and shorten, and then you can't drive them anymore. That's the problem. And when you go through the tunnel, it's basically the train is in the way, so that's not a good thing either. But yeah.
But yeah, as you mentioned, indeed, the thing is we're less of a supermarket, but more a last mile delivery system because we do all the supply chain and the driving ourselves. So yeah, it's a nice opportunity if you can combine it like that and do more and more to not waste any.
It seems like all of those are going that. We have this thing here in Germany called Flaschenpost, which only did like drinks, like water, like you know, like all kind of drinks that you can order. And lately they also started doing like washing equipment and like things for your house and like food and everything. So it seems like focusing only on one thing doesn't seem to be paying off enough. But it feels weird that I guess the drivers have to go to supermarkets to pick up the things now, to partner with supermarkets to get it there, or how does it work with you? Like the drivers basically, do you have your own warehouses or do you partner with supermarkets to get the stuff into the cars?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Picnic is that we do almost everything ourselves. So indeed, also the warehouses, we have our own warehouse system. We even have like a completely automated fulfillment center where there is a lot of conveyor belts, like kilometers of conveyor belts throughout the warehouse. That's all being done in an automated system. So instead of someone, a shopper, walking somewhere, getting the groceries for you, putting it in a tote, is what we call it. We now have the conveyor belts that basically get all the totes. They come to you in like on the conveyor belts. You put something in the other box. Next box comes, you put another banana in the box, and then the new totes come. And that's basically the new way of picking in our automated fulfillment centers. And the rest is all taken care of behind the scenes. So it's crazy large buildings that we have there to do that. But the cool thing is because we do that ourselves, we can also make it as efficient as possible. And it also holds for the cars. So how we have we do the routing algorithms of the cars ourselves, and we even have an app for the runner that is driving the actual car, the EPV, the electric picnic vehicle. And so everywhere is basically our software running, which allows it to make it very efficient.
I like that, especially that it's like conveyor belts and stuff. Like what always cracks me up when the AI stories are now basically being told is like, oh, we got a robot that looks like a human that packs packages like a human, and you're like, that's the most inefficient way to pack something. Like it's just like you made the one single mistake in the packing process, and you simulate it with a robot now just because it looks cool on telly. So it's like I remember I worked with a supermarket chain as well in the past, and we tried to have robots driving around, or robot cars driving around their big old halls. And we did like LiDAR, we did like radar, we did like cameras, and then we ended up like putting QR codes on the floor. And then basically when the robot drove over that one, it turned to the left. That was the fastest way and most efficient way to actually get these robots not to crash into things. Sometimes it's the simpler, like more mechanical bits that actually make sense, but they don't make the headlines, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So let's take a look at some resources, what we're going to talk about today. If we got the time for all of them, I don't know. But as you are a Java person, me too, I like coffee. So Java 25 is coming, and it says it's ready for AI development. Do you know anything about this? Do you know where the shortcomings are right now? Do you look forward to the changes?
Myself, not in particular. I'm not in the Java platform team anymore. That's where most of this used to be. They used to look forward and make sure we, as Picnic, can shift fast towards the new versions.
So the platform basically, it seems like there's a way to roll out things faster because of Java 25. So I don't know anything about it. I know it's part of JavaScript, but that's about it. But like, yeah. But it's interesting to see that there's this whole world of open source in that area as well that nobody talks about, and how it actually runs a lot of the platforms out there. And everybody's like, the cool kids use other platforms, other languages. How hard is it actually to hire people in an environment like that? When people ask you in interviews, like, what does Picnic do? And you say like, well, we're mostly Java based. Is that a deterrent to people, or is it something that they can work on?
Yeah, we aim to move quite quickly to new versions, and that's something they generally like, because most companies don't really do that. They tend to stick on some older versions. And I think what they usually like is the combination of being very up to date with all these things, but also how we do software development at Picnic, as we use a lot of static analysis tools and automation to make our code base a lot more consistent and really lift the quality of our code base. So we're really focused on that.
But that's always the thing that cracked me up. Like every time I worked in large corporations or in companies that had bigger teams, there was at one time there was a discussion about code standards and syntax and like forcing developers to work in a certain way. With static analysis and AI tooling, I think this is kind of out of the window because we can make it happen. My answer was always like, it doesn't matter what syntax you write in, as long as it goes into the repository in a certain syntax, so we don't get any merge issues.
Yeah, so I think we take that one step further, and we do have a lot of rules running, like on every build, that make sure that there is a certain code standard and sometimes code style being followed, because there are often ways, like things that you can write one thing in code, but you can have 3 slightly different ways of writing it, and they all mean the same thing. Well, what we want is that instead of these 3 different ways of writing it, we run some rules on the code that you wrote to make sure that only one of these 3 is allowed, basically, and it basically rewrites the other 2 variants for you. So it's like it makes for a very consistent code style. And that's not only for code style, but also for potential bugs that you might introduce or some less efficient things. To help you and raise the code standards, basically.
Yeah. This is another big thing that just came out. Google is basically now pushing AI heavily inside Chrome, doing like an agentic browser that browses for you, that puts Gemini into everything, much like Microsoft put like Copilot into everything. I'm not cynical, but that headline, the browser you love reimagined with AI, is like, now you're not going to love it anymore.
Which is true for some people, I guess. You know, some people, it's like, I saw recently this idea that, you know, just now seeing the sort of words AI can put some people off because they go, come back when I can actually see its value, rather than maybe a year ago when we would say, oh, it's got AI. Oh, I'll give that a go, you know, and that maybe we are kind of going into that kind of cynical stage. Does it feel a bit late for them to be doing this as well? Is it just
Well,
me?
I guess the other bit is they're only rolling it out in the US. That's the other thing that I find weird about this as well. Like, I guess because of privacy laws in Europe, they cannot do it, which is then, of course, the next red flag for me kind of thing. Like,
it depends a bit on how they are going to do it, because sometimes if it's like the first answer now usually is like from Gemini, sometimes that can help and gives you something you want to know quite quickly as an answer, but depending on how invasive it is, it can be nice.
it's also like, whose truth is it? Like, that's the other thing. Like, there's an answer that I gave for you and said like, oh, I went through like 5 websites and I thought this one was the most important one because they paid for it. Or what is the algorithm behind it? I feel it feels weird that there is like, we go into this agentic world where browsers do things for us under the hood, much like malware did in the past, and we then just wonder like, okay, it gives me a result back, but if I don't know where it came from, maybe it's just because I'm old and I really want to know where information comes from. The joy of the web to me was doing research on it and not just like automated away from me. I mean, price comparison sites were I worked for a price comparison site back in the days, and it was all fake. It basically, who paid the most was the cheapest listing. Like, and that's why I always like feel very weird doing this. I mean, I guess if somebody goes with an agentic browser to Picnic and buys the things and sends in the forms and stuff, like how would you know that it's not a DDoS attack and that it's actually just really the user? That's the other thing. Like, how do we differentiate bot traffic from human traffic by now?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, Paul from Google, from the DevRel team, did an interesting one. He did this thing where basically it's a system that generates content for you on the fly while you're surfing. So it actually gives you a AI generated internet, which is kind of where we're going, I guess. But it's a very interesting thought experiment to like browse an imaginary web, what that would look like to generate the content for you as you need it, which is always sold as a very cool thing. But at the same time, I find it like, sometimes I want to see things that I'm not interested in just to push my own boundaries, right?
And that's hard to know. When do you want to not see it, and when do you?
Yeah, exactly.
Just on that, I mean, I think it's a fantastic idea, and a bit of a shout out really to Paul Kinlan who did that. But it does sort of, I can't imagine it being something that's like really going to take off. That idea of kind of it being, websites are effectively just like the shop front. They just show you what's inside, right? If they go, well, we've extracted all this information using the LLM, we've synthesized it, we've put it into an article that we've written, and now we're showing to you. We all get a little bit annoyed by AI articles and things that you can tell were written by AI. So I think we're a long way off actually wanting to kind of, even though I love the experiment, I think we're a long way off actually wanting to kind of surf that web that's like generated for us, because then how do I share that with somebody and then believe that the information they're reading because it was generated for me? I don't know. It just becomes very, we could all just start asking LLMs for news stories effectively, or things we want to read that we agree with, and then we become even more kind of down that rabbit hole of just reading things that we agree with and ignoring things we don't.
It's a very interesting one. Yeah. This was also really cool. The Tesla app is 760 megabyte. That's like a third of the first iPhone, like, for one app. And they analyzed it and found out it's basically mostly Godot graphics formats and 3D models and stuff that actually are replicated a few times. And I think that's basically where bundling and app generation becomes really bizarre. Like, basically that we, especially with generated code, it just puts more things in and more things in and more things in without us realizing. And it's a wonderful read. Shame it's on X, but it's a wonderful read that actually just goes through the whole details of that. I would love to have like a more detailed blog post on that. But it's really interesting to see just how your app can blossom and get too big without you realizing it? Like, with your static analysis hat on and your other hat on, like, what is your app written in? Is it basically converted, or is it written in Swift?
We do have some native parts, but most of it we write in React. But actually, because the Play Store and the App Store reviews are mostly slowing us down, at some point we decided to build the page platform, and there we basically we turned the app into an engine that can render these pages, and outside of that, on the Picnic side, we have this page platform which you can create pages and then easily push new changes. Well, it's actually the other way around. The app requests what pages to show, and here we can dynamically decide what kind of pages we want to show, what the content should be, such that we're not really dependent on the apps themselves, but we can write everything in-house.
Mm-hmm. Cool. But yeah, it's an interesting bit that 760 meg of an app. I mean, that's like more than a CD. Like back in the days when we sent DVDs and CDs out. We're gonna move on. I found that an interesting post as well. It's about little bits of CSS, saying like what front-end developers should know about CSS. And Adam Argyle from former Google basically says like everybody should know page transitions, dialog, popover details, light and dark gradient, animating light and dark gradients, type saving their CSS system, and add springy easing to animation. I think that's kind of like daring, considering that most developers that I know see CSS as like a cryptic thing between Greek and Latin and don't want to touch it and instead go Tailwind. So I think the basics of CSS is something that I would expect from front-end developers to know, but that's a lot of bleeding edge stuff going on here. How about you, Dan? Do you know all of that?
I was actually just looking down the list. I mean, I don't type save my CSS. I'll be totally honest with you. For the most part, things like page transitions as well. I mean, like you're saying, bleeding edge. It's a very new and kind of popular technique, isn't it? It's whether or not I always think with these things, it's whether or not it sticks around. It's whether it really takes off and becomes commonplace that's important. But also springy easing to animation. I'm a complete hypocrite because I love animations on anything, but I don't really love them on websites because I go from that essentially from that position of it's pointless. It just looks nice until there's a real UX reason for it, which I can't really think of a great one off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I don't know why as well you would need to animate light and dark gradient text. That seems so specific. Yeah, I don't think you need to know all of that.
No. I mean, more important is this, I think, like seeing that NPM is under attack every week right now. There's a great checklist of like security best practices, what to do with the NPM stuff. A great way of thinking about it because, yeah, right now that seems to be like the number one attack vector that we have in the environment. And it's partly because people just trust NPM explicitly without thinking about it. Let's move on to the geeky bits because we spent a lot of time on the other one. We can move on one. This was hilarious. LimeWire still exists. And it is an NFT trading platform now. And it bought the Fire Festival on eBay.
Chris, I love the comment. Scroll down a little bit. There's one guy that says his name is MDMRN, just there. Yeah, that certainly is a sentence. I know it's reality, but it reads like a Mad Lib. I thought that's
pretty much
just
pretty
keywords,
nuts, isn't it? I mean, the Fire Festival, there was a documentary about it showing like what not to do. Why would you buy this brand? Really odd.
Oh, madness. LimeWire, though, the good old days.
This is also really cool. SGI demos. Remember back in the days, or you don't remember because you probably weren't born. Silicon graphics was like the bleeding edge of technologies. Like it was like these supercomputers that now are basically much slower than your average mobile phone. And they had all these like really cool 3D demos. And this is a repository where you can actually try them all out in your in WASM in the browser. So basically, back in the days, this was basically how it was on the big machine, and it was just like incredible. And if you click those, you can see those animations now in your browser running smoothly. That back in the days was basically, it was like 5 hours of like pre-rendering and showing things. And I remember as a kid, like watching the Ars Electronica was like a yearly competition of like computer graphics in very early days. And there were always like these things there, and you just looked at that like, wow, that is incredible. But it's so cool that somebody archives these old things now and puts them as WASM in the browser.
It's very
So
cool.
that's a pretty interesting one as well. Dan, you showed me that one. I absolutely love that one. That's I'm Not a Robot. It's basically tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's essentially different levels of captures in different kind of ways, really. Where you start with a simple kind of checkbox, and you work your way through kind of increasingly difficult levels. I have to just say as well, this entire website is absolutely fantastic. There's so many brilliantly kind of weird, internet, I don't even know how you would summarize it, games, quirky little mini games. And yeah, I mean, this is a great example because I almost think there needs to be I don't know, like an online museum for just these kinds of puzzles, capture, recapture type things, because they're getting very elaborate now. I think I saw TikTok has got some, which you might have on this I'm Not a Robot game, where you have to rotate the head of like a dog to make it the right way up so that it looks like, it fills in the gap in the photograph. And I thought, okay, that's quite good. It works well on mobile. You can sort of drag it, and it is a little mini game, but I just love the creativity of Neil for actually thinking, okay, let's turn it into one then.
Well, I tried to invite him to be on the show, and he's too shy. That's the really annoying thing. But yeah, we can see what we can do. But it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and there's so many. And do you know what I was pleased by, actually? There's one thing. It's a sort of slight tangent. If you go to the bottom of the page, he's got to buy me a coffee. And I thought, let's just see if people are paying for this, right? Because it's free. They're just for fun. And there's loads of people are donating, saying thanks very much, for the great work, and I really enjoy coming back to your website. And I thought it's like we've gone back to the 90s where the real just making a website for the pure joy of it, but people are actually seeing the value. So it's great.
Cool. Now, a few tips and tricks. This is a really cool one. There's a JavaScript question mark equals operator, and it basically is for default values. So he shows here what it does. It's like username is null, user.name is undefined, username is anonymous, and then you had the two question selector, and now you have the question and the other selector. And the full name of it is the nullish coalescing assignment operator, in case you want to impress people, as he says, like at parties. So Chris Coyer, nice little humor. But I like the cleverness of those things, but I'm worried about the readability of it. What do you think, Rick?
I think it's indeed adding some complexity. I do like the name, though. Yeah, it's a bit much, I would say.
It's a bit like when you do a parse int with like the bracket 0, or you do like bit shifting on things, which is very, very effective and very, very fast, but like unreadable for a normal person out there. So it's an interesting one that these things exist, but sometimes you just like, I just wonder when people start writing parsers and writing like things like prettier and things like that, they have to keep up with all the things that you can do. I mean, especially in JavaScript, there's this like encryption that you can do any JavaScript with plus, minus, and braces and curly braces, and basically the rest is then just basically done by the JVM for you. But it's translating JavaScript into something completely unreadable. But yeah, it's fast, but it's not readable. So, but this is a really interesting one. Maybe we got used to arrow functions, so we got used to that one as well. Maybe, I don't know. Learning CSS, as we had earlier, there's a new 9 new modules on Learn CSS on web.dev, which is interesting because it now has view transitions and it has paths, shapes, clipping, and masking. These are new things, I think. And that's pretty cool to actually see those. And CSS nesting, like all the bits that CSS can do that you probably never heard of. What is it with view transitions and page transition? It seems Google is really, really occupied with that, right?
No, I mean, it does just, I know what you mean. It does feel like they've, that it's the hot new technique, you know? I think it's maybe just I don't know, it feels to me just like a nice visual, but I'm not sure if there's like if it's necessary, it feels like a little sort of a bit of glitter, you'd call it in music, I suppose, something that's like an extra little UX kind of, oh, that's nice, but actually doesn't really add to the experience, in terms of like usability of the application. But yeah, they are pushing it, definitely. You're seeing it everywhere. I think it's React as well.
I remember there was this portal element that completely came and vanished, and nobody didn't make an impact. That was like an iframe that could become a full screen experience when you click on it. That Google tried to put into Chromium, and had like origin trials and all kind of stuff. But it is a UX problem and a security problem, taking over the whole screen without people knowing that it has been taken over, because I can then basically just go and turn it into a PayPal or a PayPal looking site and get your information. Yesterday, I tweeted about this, or like I blue skied about it, or how do you call it? I tweeted about it on Mastodon. There was a fake pop-up for reCAPTCHA that basically asked me to copy and paste something into the terminal. So it said like, open the terminal, paste something in, and then you get a message back from reCAPTCHA. And I've never seen that. And this is like, wow, this is like the most, never ever do this. If any website tells you to copy something into the terminal and run it, it's going to be horrible. It's never a good idea. That you should not have access to that. But then again, we make agents now to actually access the command line and run Unix commands for us. So maybe I'm, again, too defensive about this. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like that's sorry, go for it, Rick.
Oh, which one do you trust more? We put a lot of trust at some point in the agents, which will be more and more.
Well, the other thing was also, the question was that somebody asked, like, who is this pop-up, this fake phishing pop-up for? Because a normal user wouldn't know what the terminal is. And people who know what the terminal is would never do that. So it feels like you try to find an intersection of people who are just like, oh, cool, yeah, I do that. But then again, I remember when I worked for a large corporation, and basically something was wrong on my Windows machine, and basically I called our help center, and they basically like, okay, open PowerShell and copy this in and then run it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, okay, then do remote access and let me do it. And you're like, that's even worse. I just wanted to fix my machine, not take it over. It was very interesting to see that the command line is never going away, although it's a thing from the 70s. We should not be needing it anymore, but it's still the most powerful thing to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yes, nicely put.
Last tool that I found really interesting is image.app or image.app, which is an interesting one because it's basically photo and video hosting for yourself. So you don't need iPhoto, or you don't need Google Photo, but you can actually host it yourself. And it seems to be pretty well maintained and interesting to see. And I had that because I pay for Flickr. I have a lot of photos on Google Photo, but I'm still wondering, like, what could I do to browse them myself and actually make them better? Especially looking at like old hard drives, how many pictures I have that are never imported anywhere else. So that might be an interesting thing to do, but I don't know. It's like running an S3 with it in it. I don't know what to do with it, but it's an interesting tool that these things exist, that people do them, and it does like EXIF data, showing it on maps and all the bits and bobs that you expect from a good thing, but you can host it yourself. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it looks really great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried it in earnest yet, but seems to be like there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, maybe ask them to come around. We'll see. But yeah, let's talk about what you do. Now, static analysis insights. We talked a bit about what that helps, but you also came prepared with a presentation that you want to talk about something, right? What is GraalVM?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about a specific part of the GraalVM, because I imagine if people hear the word GraalVM, they think of native image, fast startup times, these things, which is great. But I want to talk a bit about a more specific part of the GraalVM, and that is the polyglot engine.
Mm-hmm.
So we use that within Picnic for we build a rule engine, which basically allows us to write rules in multiple languages to define business logic. And the idea is that we, as a backend developers, do not need to write that, but that actually analysts can write Python and JavaScript, for example. And then the goal is then not the fast startup times, but the idea is that we can really ship features very quickly. Do a lot of business iterations on business logic and make sure we can ship that to our customers without having to interrupt a backend developer to ask for any kind of business features.
So that's what the polyglot thing comes in, like the languages that you support are right now JavaScript and Python, and any other in the works as well?
No, we keep it at this for now, and that's mostly because our analysts are already they are quite tech savvy, and they already have to use Python and JavaScript a bit in their day-to-day job, so it best fits what they already know.
Cool. Okay, so we're gonna hand over to you quickly now to basically get us through that deck and give us more information, and then we have some more questions for you afterwards, I guess. And unless we didn't understand a word, but we'll see. So hand over to Rick and tell us all about GraalVM in action.
Nice, thank you. Well, I already did the intro, so now onto the screen. So why we're looking actually into this is that because the usual flow of a business case can be very slow. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say within your company, the business comes up with an idea. I think I see there's some delay in my slides. Yeah. So the business has an idea, then they go around the table, they start to come up with a list of requirements. Then they give it to the backend team. They have to put it on the roadmap. They are, of course, already quite busy, so it will probably start being implemented next quarter. Then they have to actually implement it, and they deploy it to production. They need to find some bugs, which can all take quite a while. So this whole process, usually within the company, takes at least a month, maybe even 6 weeks or longer. And there's even more complicating factors because so from the first moment the requirements were clear up until actually starting to implement it, the requirements can of course also change. So and on top of that, we are active in 3 different countries. I don't think you see it on my screen right now. Do you see anything other than the even more limitations on my screen, or? Can you also see like the?
We only see the only limitations.
Okay.
Now we got the ideal world coming. Oh, there we go.
Cool. Yeah, again. My clicker, if I click, it doesn't always work. But anyways, what I wanted to say is that because we're active in a few different countries, the business logic sometimes has to be different per country because the culture differs, or other things. You have, and another important thing is that there are different regulations per country which you need to take into account. So the thing is, there is this ever-changing list of requirements that the business wants you to build. But of course, this makes you really the bottleneck, and this is something we don't want because ideally we're also not the ones implementing the business logic and making these small exceptions. For this country we do this, for this country we do this. So what if we take one step back and we start actually thinking about what would the ideal world look like for us as backend engineers? Well, the business team comes up with an idea, and after that they actually they start thinking about, okay, how can we actually define this business logic, and how can we also control it ourselves? So write it and control it. And after they did that, how can we make sure that the business team themselves can actually test all the logic, deploy the logic, and then monitor how this is working? Well, that sounds very ideal because, well, if you, as you can read, this is all being done by the business teams. And we as developers only would need to provide something for them to do this on. And as a result, we as developers, we can simply pull our hands off. They can do the work, and we can sit on the beach and drink a beer. Well, that's of course not true, because what we as backend developers can then do, we can make sure that we actually improve the platform, the features that are available on the platform, make sure the platform is more we can extend it, scale it, whatever, to make sure that they can again create more business logic and make it easier to write these things. So what would this look like? Let's do a small thought experiment of a very simple case that we have. And that's called the first order booklet. So let's say a customer comes to Picnic and wants to order something. They actually place an order. So then a placed order event happens. And what we want to do is we want to check, hey, is this the first order of the customer? And if this is the case, then we would like to add a welcome booklet. The idea is that it explains a little bit how Picnic works and all that. So we have an event, and then there is an action. And this is, again, a simple example, but we noticed within Picnic that this kind of business logic is happening very, very often and on many different levels for many different events. So if we can take one step back, what is the goal? The goal is that if a thing happens within Picnic, that we want an effect to be applied throughout Picnic. And in order to do that, a lot of tiny decisions need to be made of, for example, is it the first order, or many things that can happen here. So how would that look like more on the technical side? Well, within Picnic, there are many different kind of events happening: order placed, new customer signed up, something is delivered, and I can go on like that. And on the other side, we have a lot of actions that are being applied. For example, a promotion, a communication that's being sent, and many more. And the thing is, the decisions, they represent the business logic that tie the left side to the right side. But there's a big question mark in here, because we as backend developers don't want to be the bottleneck here. We want to make sure that the analysts can actually do something themselves here. Well, we already touched upon it a little bit in the introduction, but before we went into when we started with this, identifying what would this red box be, we also first considered other existing tools that like off-the-shelf solutions that we could use. So, for example, tools and a knowledge base is something that can actually help here. But when making some proof of concepts, we actually identified that we didn't really want the vendor login, and we saw that we also want to extend the tools in quite a few cases, which would make it a better fit for Picnic, but we actually could not really do that. So we decided to not go with an off-the-shelf solution, but actually we decided to build the Picnic rule engine. And I mentioned a bit in the beginning that we had that the analysts already know quite a bit of Python and JavaScript. So we know, okay, probably these rules should be able to write the rules in both Python or JavaScript. And then knowing that our backend is mostly Java, you actually can already sense what the great answer is. And that is that we wanted to use GraalVM, and specifically the GraalVM polyglot engine, because it would allow us to build the backend in Java, and the analyst can actually write JavaScript and Python that then runs all on the same JVM. So the polyglot engine of the GraalVM allows us to do specifically this. It allows for the execution and interoperability of language interpreters for additional programming languages. So we could run all the languages on the same JVM, and they could still also communicate with each other. That's precisely what we wanted. So now you know a bit about the context. I want to explain a bit more of how this rule engine now works, and then I want to dive a bit deeper into the actual like how GraalVM works and how we can load these rules and all those things. So this is the generic flow. We have a lot of rule writers within Picnic, and well, they can write their rule, and the idea is that they check it into GitHub, into Git, and then there's some testing and some code quality assurance that we have, which is then run by Team City every time they open a pull request. We run these checks before they can merge, of course. And after the rules are merged, we produce a new version of all the rules, and they are being and then they're being shipped basically. And then the rule engine listens for events that are happening within Picnic, either via RabbitMQ or Kafka. And then whenever we see that a rule should fire, the evaluator goes to evaluate the rule, basically. And sometimes it might require some additional context. We will dive into that a bit later. So then there's a database available with some more information, because an event cannot have all the historical order data, for example. So there's a database that we can query to check some things there. And then the evaluator can produce actions that it would like to be applied. So yes, that can be, for example, sending some SMS or emails. It can be applying a promotion and many other things. And then the executor is responsible for making sure that that get actually propagated to the right Picnic service. So back again to the example of the first order booklet, because I want to show you how that would look like in terms of actually writing the rule in Python and JavaScript. So we're going to look at exactly this rule. So what you see here is the Python version, and all the rules, they start with a similar method signature. What we can see here is, hey, we have a method called rule, and we get the event that actually triggered this specific rule. And then we have some data bindings and action bindings. Well, first we start with the event itself. What we can do here is we want to extract the user ID from the event. So we have an event, we say, hey, from the order details, please give me the user ID. And similarly, also the order ID. Well, the first thing we need to figure out is this the first order of the customer or not? And for that, we can use the data binding. So we can ask, hey, please, I want to run a query, and I want the result of that. We say, okay, select all the orders for this user. And well, we basically want to know what the number of orders are. And then once we have that, we get to the action binding, where we can say two things. We can say, hey, I want no action to be taken. The reason is, well, this is not the first order of the customer, so we're not going to add a booklet. And in the other case, what we want to do is we want to say, hey, I want to apply a promotion. And in this case, I want to add to this order, I want to add the welcome booklet, and I want that with a count of 1. So as you can see, fairly simple to define such a rule. That is something that our analysts definitely can do, as they are quite tech savvy. And just to show you a bit, I won't go through it again, but this is the JavaScript variant of the exact same rule, where we have the same method signature, and the rest is also quite similar. So yeah, that's it for the demo. Now a bit more into depth on the GraalVM side. How does this actually work, and how can we make sure that such a rule is actually being executed? Well, we start with having a rule, and then within Picnic there is an event firing, and we need to make sure that the event is routed to the rule that it should trigger, because not one event does not trigger all the rules. We either have an order placed event or a new user, for example. So then the event is routed to the rule. Then it can acquire some additional context, and then it can execute its logic. And as a result of that, we can output an action that we then would like to have applied. So onto the first part of loading a rule. Well, a rule can be either in JavaScript or Python. And what we want is there is a GraalVM context, which we will dive into in the next slide. And the idea is that we can put the Python or JavaScript code into this context such that we can execute it. So what does a context do for us? Well, a few things. It is basically the runtime. I'll put all of them already. So it has the runtime state. So there are we load the variables there, the functions in there, and it manages that. And the context can execute the polyglot code. So we will say, hey, this is Python or JavaScript code, and then it knows how to execute that. It also manages the system resources like memory, threads, and things like that. And it also enforces security. So we can determine what the context is allowed to do. Can it make a network? Can we make network calls from here? Can we spawn new processes? Can we create new threads? Or what are all the things that we are allowed to do? And because this is quite an extensive and important thing, there's a very large builder class here. This is part of the Java doc. And here you can really nicely precisely specify what a GraalVM context should be allowed to do and what not. I won't dive into detail there. But this context is not everything. The context is a more short-lived thing in which the rule lives. But the context is actually ran on the GraalVM polyglot engine, which is then the long-lived thing. And this basically allows the GraalVM context to have access to the GraalVM compiler, but also the truffle, the underlying truffle API and all these things. So it can manage context on the GraalVM. The GraalVM polyglot engine manages the context, but actually it can manage multiple contexts on the same engine. And that is very interesting because it can do a few things for us. Well, first of all, it manages the runtime infrastructure. So here there's also a lot of things with the deciding whether you can do network calls and these kind of things. But a very important one is the shared code optimization, especially when rules have a lot of overlapping features that you want to use. What you can do is you can have a shared part that all the context can actually access. And instead of having 3 different times the same piece of code that has to be compiled and run and being kept in memory, you can now put that on the polyglot engine, and then that's a shared part that all the contexts can use. And as a result of that, you get a lower CPU usage, lower memory footprint, and better startup times, and a lot more. And one final interesting thing is we have the global configuration here. It can also has a more specific things like the compiler flags that are being shared and determines whether you can do code sharing or not. That's all configured on the polyglot engine level. So then onto the more picnic specific case on how we actually load a rule into the GraalVM context, because the rules, they actually live in a repository where people write the JavaScript and Python rules. But then we need to make sure that we actually put that into the GraalVM context such that it is this blob here that we see on the right. So to do that, we have rule definitions where you specify, okay, this is the ID of the rule, the simple description. We specify the language and the actual source code, which is basically the string, which is the actual rule. Then what we do is we have the code for actually making this into an executable rule. So what we can see here is that we extract the language, and then we tell the context, hey, please evaluate something into the context. We want to load the resource, namely the actual source code that is provided, and it is this language. So it basically puts the rule in there, but then it's important that we can also invoke this rule. And for that, we have this handle. So what we say is we have a handle to the rule, and that corresponds exactly with the things I just showed you in the demo. These are the method signatures, and they are for a reason named specifically rule, because that is how we are able to here have the handle to the actual code. So the first step is GraalVM context, load the rule in there, and then the second is creating the handle such that we can have something to actually invoke the rule. Okay. So then we have the rule here in the context. Then the next step is important, because whenever we receive an event, which in Picnic's case is likely a Java-based event, we need to make sure that we can actually route the event to the correct rule. But also we need to make sure that this Java event is understood by the JavaScript or Python rule. So you see a question mark here, and yes, we need some form of transformation to make sure we can actually understand the rule. To give you a simple example, we have the order details that we also saw in the demo. Here there are nice Java getters, but when being used in the rule specifically themselves, then they are written differently, and still we want it to be how it should be in the native gas language, so the canonical way of doing things there. So it's clear that there has to be a Java DTO translation layer to make sure that we can actually make it accessible in the guest language native way. So what we use for that is we use Jackson introspection, and we rely heavily on the GraalVM proxy object. So how do we do that? Well, we have a simple Pojo, and then we use Jackson to actually extract a list of members of this Pojo. And then what we can do is based on that, we can transform that into a GraalVM proxy object. And that object can then be accessed from our two different guest languages. And the idea is that if we have a map here on the Java side, that it's basically available as a dictionary in Python or an object in JavaScript. So what that means is that if in JavaScript you're my phone, Google Gemini went off. Excuse me. So what we then want, if we on the JavaScript side, if we're invoking an access on one of the getters, then the GraalVM proxy object goes back all the way to the Java Pojo and delegates this invocation to the actual Java object. What do I mean by that? I have some nice code to show you. You don't need to read all of it. I will walk you through it. The idea is that when we have this proxy object, we are doing an invocation on a specific member, let's say user ID. And here in the implementation, what we can see is that we're going to get the member user ID. And then what is important here is that the adapter is trying to invoke the specific delegate, which is then the Java object, and it's trying to invoke the Java object directly. So by going through the proxy object get member, we actually invoke the Java thing that's the delegate here. So that's a bit on how that works. Just as a small recap, what we saw now is that we have a rule, we have an event, and then the event is being routed to the rule, and it's being made accessible to the rule. Then the next part is that we want to be able to get some additional context such that we can collect enough data to make decisions about our business logic that we actually want to write. So I briefly showed this in the demo. What we have here is the data bindings, and there are a few cool things that we can do with that. So the data bindings are actually things on the Java side that we made available such that the gas languages can use them. So let's say we have a rule where we want to gift someone some an extra item as a thank you or whatever. The idea is that we don't want to gift this person an item and then later see, oh, it's not in stock, and we promised an item, but we cannot really deliver it because in this region where the user lives, we actually don't have any stock for it. So what we can do is we can use the data binding, and we can actually do a GET request to one of the other Picnic services. And in this case, we say, hey, we want to do a GET request to the stock service. This is the endpoint, and for this we have a specific article ID and a region ID, and this will then return the data. But maybe even one step before that is that we need to know in which region does this user actually live, because that's important to know. Well, for that we actually have a table in the database where we can use the query data binding to say, hey, what is the region where this user lives in? And then we have enough information to do the GET request, which is just to show you that we can then also use a database to get additional information. And then what I'm going to show you now is how this is technically implemented on the Java side. So when we execute this, it will actually go to this code. So what we saw here is that we have the query all, and we have two parameters of this, the query and the params. And what we see here is that we have the all method, and then we have a value object here that we can then extract values from. So what you see is that we here are getting the SQL by doing the get query, and we're getting a string. And for the params, we can have multiple. We're basically extracting a map here. And what we then do, we're on the Java side of things, and we can say simply use our database client that we have and say, hey, please execute this query with these params. And then we get back some data. But this, again, needs to be available in the GAS language. So then we are using the proxy adapter to actually to .adapt. And then we basically have this proxy object that can then be forwarded and then used in the GAS language. That's it for the context side. So this is where we're at now. Now we want to look at how can we then produce actions. So that is the last part of the method signature. And a simple example is the gifting campaign that we have. We can say, please, I want to send a gifting campaign. It's this is the ID of the campaign for this user with these articles. And another example is that, well, let's say we were late with a delivery, so we give you a gift to make up for it. We do not only want to send this gift, we also want to do some communication about it. So we can say, please send a push message to this user, same user ID, and we can give a title and a body. And that's the result. That's how we create actions. And on the Java side, it looks as follows. What we have the same value object. This is the push action binding. And then we again can extract some values by saying, okay, please get the message body, get a title, optional deep link, and the IDs we need to send it to. And then we can simply create an action that we can then later we can send that to the executor. Okay. Then the execution part. So the thing is, what you saw right now is the explanation of the self-service part of our platform. So the cool thing is that this is really a flexible setup, and we give a lot of power and responsibility to the analysts to let them define any kind of rule and write a lot of, they can determine what business logic they want to write. This can also come with the downsides, of course. So what can happen is that if they misconfigure something or they make a small mistake, we can simply provide so many actions that we are basically overloading the executor, or we are almost executing the wrong things. So our systems will get overloaded. So we really had to think a bit about how can we make something in between that allows us to make sure that whatever comes out is actually correct and that we should actually apply those actions. Well, we had to build quite a few guardrails here to make sure these problems didn't happen. One of them is, for example, rate limiting. We also do consent checking. What if we are not allowed to send a marketing push message? And we also have, for example, deduplication policies to make sure we're not sending the same push notification twice about your upcoming delivery or something. So a lot of these things are now built into the platform such that we don't do anything wrong there. So that's a bit about the underlying, the inner workings of the rule engine. Now I want to give you some numbers and some ideas of how this has been performing in production. By now we have over 200 rules in production across the 3 different countries that we have. And in total, they are responsible for 37 million evaluations per day. That is an insane number and is only growing. But the cool thing is they are responsible for almost 2 million actions that are being executed per day. So this is the thing I mentioned with push messages, giving gifts, or many other things. So that's a lot of actions. And on average, we're onboarding about 1 rule writer a month who is then adding new things to the system. So from the analyst side, it's also important to be able to test the rule and to know that what you're doing is actually correct. Well, we have a few things for that. One of them is we have a component testing setup where they're able to basically mimic how like the certain state of, for example, the database, and then the event that comes in, see if everything is evaluating accordingly, and then they can match that against the expected actions that are being outputted. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that we also have a dry run feature. So let's say you wrote a test, we published your rule. Instead of directly enabling it, you can simply put it in dry run, and then you can see a bit how it performs. So here there's a dashboard of the metrics of a rule. You can see like how many evaluations were there, what was the success rate, is this way too often or not enough? Like you can troubleshoot a bit these things. And on top of that, we have also versioning for rules. So we do not directly activate your new rule. The idea is that you, that you decide when to go to a new version, or if you made a mistake, you can simply roll back, for example. But yeah, I want to take you through one interesting case that we had, and that is the cheese paper incident. If you say this within Picnic, everyone will directly know which instance of an incident you mean. And I will explain it to you, and maybe you already think of what the problem here is. But let's say that whenever we had a rule that whenever an order was being placed, and this order contains a cheese-related product. So on the rule side, we have a list with cheese-related products. And so we check that, and if you have indeed a cheese-related product, what we do is we simply add an order to your delivery with a cheese paper. This is just a very simple thing we do as a service where we want to give you something to wrap your cheese in. So maybe you already spotted it, but as I said, there is a list of cheese-related products. And what happens if you add if you add the cheese paper as cheese-related product to the list? Well, then you have a cycle, of course. And what happened is that for this specific delivery, we started adding a lot of orders to this delivery till at some point this order got so big that the event for this order basically brought part of our RabbitMQ cluster down, and this was not very nice for us. But in the end, we solved this, of course, with an interesting case to share. And one of the lessons here is that you cannot really predict all the things that can happen with the system you build. It's like one of the downsides of creating such a flexible system where you put a lot of responsibility in the hands of business analysts in this case. So we had some lessons learned. It's very important to make sure that you provide a lot of tooling to the analyst to ensure the correctness, like the component test, the dry run, and all the things I mentioned, so that they can really dive into, is this actually doing what it's supposed to do? It's very important on our side to have very good traceability, to be able to know and answer any kind of questions also, as to why did my rule not run, or why didn't I see any actions, and help a bit with these kind of questions. One issue we had is that at some point there wasn't really clear ownership of all of who owned which rules within the company. Sometimes people left and all these things. And whenever a rule was firing, it was not really clear who had to look into it and improve the rule. But now we have a nice reporting strategy such that it's... Oh, wait, you don't see the point? Yes. And now we actually made sure that this reporting and tagging of creators of campaign of rules is going a lot better. And I talked a bit about Git in the beginning, that they have to write these rules and check them into Git and how all that works. Although they are quite tech savvy, we still also provide trainings to make sure that these analysts know a bit how to do this, and we give them some practice to get better at this, because not everyone knows this. So what have we accomplished? Well, we have accomplished a self-service platform where we as a developer don't need to think about writing business logic anymore, which is, of course, very nice for us. And we built a very flexible and powerful system that gives a lot of responsibility to the rule writers. One funny chart to show you is that, well, there has been, we have created the rule engine quite a few years ago already, but over time we have more and more activity on the rules, and more people are actually writing and implementing new rules, which is very cool to see. And I want to explain to you one use case before ending. And this is a use case that is implemented by one of our analysts. So and the use case is called the loyalty program use case. And what this entails is that whenever a user places an order in the Picnic app, they are able to collect some points. And when they have enough points, they are able to, where is it? Yes, to claim rewards. But of course, there are a few different things here that are happening. So we need to save somewhere the number of points for a user. We need to add points for this user. We need to reset them at the end of the month. They need to be able to claim rewards in the app. We actually need to deliver this, so we need to add it to the delivery. So as you can hear, there are quite some steps. But the cool thing is that this use case was implemented by one analyst within a few weeks' time, without any backend development involved. So that is quite powerful. And it is at some point we even started seeing use cases we haven't even thought of that they would be possible, or that people would want to write them. So we're really happy with all the use cases that in the end are being implemented. So that was it for the talk. If you want to know more about Picnic, you can go to blog.picnic.nl, and we are also hiring, so you can go to join.picnic.app. And yeah, I would say thanks all for your attention. I'm really open to any kind of questions or discussions.
Oh, we're muted again. It always happens. We come back on muted. That's automatically. There you are, Chris.
Interesting, very interesting. What's the share of Python versus JavaScript? What do your business analysts prefer?
I think for a while they have more preferred JavaScript, but now it's more on the Python side.
Okay. The loyalty program is an interesting one, because I guess to store the points that every user had, was that already part of the database, or was that something that needed to be created in the business rule? Because that feels weird to change the database structure.
Good question. That is, the values are not stored in the actual rule engine database. That's the nice thing. We have a few different tools. We have, for example, an attribute data store, a very general store for attributes, for data points. And as an action binding, we basically provide people the option to set values in the attribute data store for a user. So with one simple data binding, they can say, hey, please set these values for this user in the attribute data store. And then there, the points are being collected, basically.
And I guess the front-end team then had to actually put something into the interface as well to actually show your points and to get rewards, because that's a whole new user flow, isn't it?
Exactly. So that indeed also needed to happen. Is my Wi-Fi still okay, or?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw some freezing. So yeah, partially that, but also the page platform I mentioned. I'm not sure about the implementation there, but I think they also were able to do some part there on the analysts are also able to write part of this. But yes, it was not without the front end development.
I do love the separation bit, that basically if a business logic changes, that developers get actually asked to build new code makes no sense. I mean, that you have these systems in between. I guess you talked about security and validating those rules and having a dry run as well. Because I mean, you could do an injection with that one as well if you were a malicious third-party provider, for example. What's the security in betweens there that you make sure that that can't happen?
Yeah, so we use this GraalVM context builder where we can really specifically allow certain things in the system. But the nice thing is that we can mostly, we allow them to write certain rules, but first of all, we ourselves decide which action bindings they can use and which ones we provide, and then also whether we execute them or not. So there's always this, they're restricted in whatever, they cannot write whatever Python code to be executed there in the backend. Cool.
One of the bits that I find interesting as well, like you said, there's quite a few rules shown up. You're using version controlling. Do people fork older versions and change the rules around, or do they start from scratch a lot? Because that's another optimization that I think might be useful to think about.
Most of them, as far as I know, they mostly also change the existing rules indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If they would not, and every time create a new rule, then we would probably notice and be like, hey, this is not how we should do things. There's versioning here for a reason, and help them. It probably means we did something wrong in educating them, but I think we're doing a good job in that.
And that's another bit, like, who does the education? Do you have an in-between team, like a DevRel team or a training team in the company, or do your engineers do it directly at the moment?
We have a Tech Academy program, and Git fundamentals is one of the courses we provide. Funnily enough, two persons of my team are also giving that, but I think that's more of a coincidence than we have a very extensive Tech Academy for many of the things, and this is one of them.
Cool. Well, thanks very much. This was really interesting. And you said you're hiring. Is any of that being fed back into open source, or is it something available that we can take a look at online, or is it so specific to your setup that it makes no sense for other people to take a look at that?
This part is not open source indeed. I'm also not sure if it would be useful in that sense. It's not more open source than the things I shared, I guess.
Yeah, not to worry. So, any feedback to the GraalVM team as well? Like to basically, have they learned about that use case? Do they know about it? Because it's a pretty cool use case. I mean, that they probably have that.
No, I've had, for example, Alina from the GraalVM team a few times in my talk, and we discussed it a few times, and also Fabio, who's working there as well. They were indeed very happy with our use case. They had some tips on how to improve some small things, but overall, no big feedback. We're really happy users, and it has been really working great for us.
Cool. Well, I think then we can kind of wrap up soon. I think we should finish seeing the cheese paper incident. We should finish with some cheese jokes as well. Like, what cheese can hide a horse? Mascarpone.
Nice.
It amazes me every week.
Which cheese can get a bear out of a tree? Come on, bear.
I like that. That's so bad, it's good. Rick, you'll get used to it. Tune in every week. Chris has got jokes on every topic, and I don't know how he remembers
it. Nobody knows how.
It's a nice skill to have.
That's why you can't clone it. Well, that was WeAreDevelopers Live for this Wednesday. Next Wednesday, I'll be in Corfu, so hopefully the connection will be a bit like that. Hopefully not, and we will see. We will talk to somebody from AWS next time, and it's going to be a really interesting session again. Thanks again, Rick, awesome driver. That was great. I'm still ordering picnic stuff right now, and I guess every time you have to pack it up and send it to us, right? Anything else you want from our audience?
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Any shout out you have for the audience as last words from you?
Shout out. Well, if you're interested in some of the open source rules we do have, we talked about in the beginning, you can go to Picnic Supermarket /Errorprone support. I think that's an interesting one to check out if you want to level up your code base.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Rick. Thanks very much, Dan. And that was it for today. See you next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.